Welcome back into Sports Memos Betting Podcast, college football, every game on the board segment. This is segment number 4, last segment for week number 7, and Teddy Covers, our closer, in with me. Teddy, welcome in.
Hey, great to be here. Drew, how are you today?
I'm doing good, man. Let's give the people what they want, and that's some winners, or at least some information on what to bet here on the bottom fourth of the card. We're starting off in Conference USA, 185, 186. MTSU at FAU. That's Middle Tennessee at Florida Atlantic. FAU minus 10, 63.5 the total here, Teddy.
In some ways, this looks to me like bet on versus bet on. It really is. FAU, 3 straight wins. They covered 2 of the 3. The one they didn't, they were laying 39 against Wagner and won by 35. The yardage numbers are there. The turnover differential is there. It's a team that has the potential to put up points in bunches. And it's also a team that hasn't faced a whole lot of opponents in their class so far this season. They've either been teams that are way better than them and teams that are way worse than them. We saw Middle Tennessee face a team in their class last time out. They were dogs of Marshall. They beat them outright. And it was a +4 turnover margin, but It's also an offense that hasn't turned the ball over even once in any of their last 3 ball games. There are some things to like about Middle Tennessee. I thought this team would be way down from where they were, obviously with the coach's son at quarterback for what felt like 15 years and major graduation losses. But the Blue Raiders have shown signs. Their yardage numbers are ugly, and that's a concern. But again, if you're playing Michigan and Duke and Iowa, you're going to have some ugly yardage numbers. I understand they gave up a bunch of yards last week against Marshall, but if your defense can create takeaways, you can hang around in games like this one. Not something I'm going to bet. But in my mind, they're both teams that have bet on potential moving forward.
Yeah, this is a game I spent a lot of time on, and guys, I concentrate on Conference USA, Sunbelt a lot, and I'll tell you a couple tidbits here that I think are actual betting advice. One is, MTSU has given up a lot of yards, like Teddy said, up over 500 to Marshall. They did get the +4 turnover margin. Asher O'Hare has done a good job at the quarterback position for Brent Stockstill. Like Teddy said, the 4 or 5 year starter, they've been there forever. But an interesting tidbit here, Teddy, Brent Stockstill is an offensive assistant at FAU now. I think that kind of favors the Owls. Lane Kiffin went out there and hired him, saw what they were doing on offense. So kind of makes me look towards the Owls. You think there's anything to that?
There's, and so one of the things that I do a lot over the summer is, all right, this coach moved here, make a note for this game. That guy moved there, make a note for this game. And, I've got all these little notes about, okay, this guy, hey, watch out for that. We spend so much time talking about head coaches. And the reality is that when you start looking at the coordinators and the position coaches, that's where the coaching really gets done. And when a coordinator or a position coach knows something intimate about their opponent, which one would think the son would know about his father after playing in the offense for, what do we keep calling it, 5? It felt like 7 years. Didn't he have 2 redshirt seasons? I think he did. I think it was 6 years that he was there. It felt like it anyway. But that's one of those little, again, you're not going to make the case for betting FAU on that alone. But when you're building a case to bet on one team or another team, that's a nice little chip to go on the one team.
Yeah, I like it, Teddy. And yeah, talking about Brent Stockstill, I mean, one of the better group of 5 quarterbacks for quite some time. So interesting tidbit there in Conference USA matchup. We got UAB at UTSA up next. That's minus 12 now. The Blazers are laying on the highway, 47 the total here, Teddy.
Well, I mean, UTSA has no quarterback. So when they can run the football effectively, like they were able to do last week against UTEP in the game that I think I gave the least amount of analysis I've ever given on any game on this podcast. I'm like, I don't freaking know. But then, of course, you go through the box score. You read the notes on it. You don't want to, when you have no opinion on something, you don't know teams well, you got to learn it. And Texas San Antonio is real simple. If they can't run, they can't win. If they can't run, they can't compete. They're also a team that is yet to win the turnover battle any game this season. That stands out to me. But, of course, you're playing Baylor and Army and North Texas, teams that are significantly better than you are. But it's not a defense that's creating any turnovers. I'll just leave it at that. Certainly not many. 3 on the season so far. The problem, of course, is do you want UAB, UAB's been a conundrum in the betting markets all year. Major graduation. Remember, the program was shut down and then restarted again, and that first class came through. Bill Clark's first class they were incredible. Character kids and winning football players, and that group, passed through. And the market expectation were this team's not going to be down; they're going to be way down, and that hasn't been the case. They've been a pretty good point spread team so far this season. Didn't cover, a huge chalk with the opener, but since then, 3-1 ATS against FBS foes. All that being said, I still think that, when you're facing South Alabama and West Kentucky and Rice, now this week, Texas San Antonio, they're facing all these weaklings that they can beat. I want to bet against UAB, but I'm not finding the right spots to do it. This doesn't look like the right spot to do it for me either. And frankly, as these guys get more and more experience, all the bet against is starting to drain away from UAB. The markets crashed on them last week, and they blew out Hawaii. They didn't blow out Rice, but they were certainly in control of that game from start to finish in a win by more than 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of games under the belt now. So in terms of inexperience, got to start kind of changing the numbers, so to speak. Let's stay in the CUSA. Here we got North Texas at Southern Miss. Teddy, we got -3 in Hattiesburg. That's Southern Miss laying in this one. 58 the total.
58 seems short to me. It just does. When you look at these two offenses, again, at this stage of the season, you're not seeing a lot of games they played against comparable foes, But in the 2 games where the Mean Green have been lined at a touchdown or less, shootout against SMU, 49-27, shootout against Houston, 46-25, and it's a comparable story with Southern Miss. The only game they played with a spread of less than 2 touchdowns all year was against Troy. Shootout, 47-42. So I don't trust either of these 2 offenses. I see plenty of big play potential for these teams, and this total to me flat out feels low. So my it's not anything I'm certainly thinking about it. This would absolutely make my card this week. I like Southern Miss and North Texas to go over the total.
All right, looking towards the over. I like it, Teddy. We got 191, 192 up next, 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific kick. Army Black Knights at Western Kentucky Hilltoppers, 43 the total, with Army actually laying 4 in the hook on the highway.
Yeah, Army found a team last week. I talked about, and you made fun of me last week. I'm like, the team speed against Tulane might be a problem. And you're like, they had team speed against Michigan, and they covered in that game. The team speed against Tulane was a problem. Tulane was able to make big plays against that defense. Western Kentucky doesn't have that same level of speed that Tulane has. Not even close. And Western Kentucky doesn't face option teams on a regular basis. So this is not a spot where I'm very interested in the home dog at all. Especially, back-to-back wins for Western Kentucky. A little bit fat and not fat and happy. They've won, Florida International and UAB and Old Dominion. They're feeling pretty good about themselves and pretty confident, even after that Central Arkansas loss in the opener that set the markets wrong on this team. But it's not a dynamic offense. They don't have the speed, and they don't see this attack on a year in, year out basis. I think Western Kentucky is going to be up against it when they face the Cadets on Saturday. Be Army or pass for me.
Guys, you're listening to the Sports Memo, Every Game on the Board podcast, college football style. We got it on YouTube now, simulcast video, also on the iTunes podcast app. So check us out, and please give us a like and share on your social media networks. We always appreciate that. And feel free to reply on Twitter at Teddy_covers or at Drew Martin Betts. Let us know what you want to hear on the pod, and happy to get it on here. So guys, please let us know how we're doing on social media, and we'll be doing this each and every week throughout college football season. Also got the NFL Every Game on the Board podcast as well. Staying in Conference USA here, Teddy, we got Charlotte at FIU, 60.5 being the total. The Panthers of FIU laying 5 in Miami.
It's another short total, or it feels short on paper. Charlotte's defense is atrocious. Mm-hmm. I'm not talking about the Clemson loss, but, Florida Atlantic does whatever they want against them. App State. Remember, App State? You watched App State last night. They weren't moving the ball up and down the field. They did against Charlotte. They have injury problems on the defensive side of the football. I do not trust them to get stops. And, Morgan's been on fire for FIU. 700 yards passing the last couple of weeks. This isn't a quarterback that I necessarily loved coming to the campaign, but, he's a dual threat QB. They've scored 75 points the last 2 games against La Tech and UMass. And again, UMass is a nice, like, get healthy game and feel good about what you're doing because we'll talk about them in a minute. They gained 115 yards in that contest. But the bottom line is we have an experienced quarterback who's making plays for FIU. And on the opposing side, we have a defense that I don't trust to get stops, but an offense that's been okay. Lean favorite, lean over. FIU is not a team I'm excited about laying a big price with, but this might be the spot to do it.
And the aforementioned UMass Minutemen at Louisiana Tech. We got minus 31 here. The Bulldogs laying at home. 63 the total, Teddy.
If I'm playing, I'm laying, you know. I mean, you know, the UMass team off the Akron win. And again, you know, they were plus turnover margin in that ballgame. Wild, exciting game. And they went to FIU and were outgained by 400-something yards and lost the game 44-0. And they're very capable of losing this game 44-0 as well.
Absolutely.
You know, from a talent standpoint, this team's at or near the bottom of college football. You know, La Tech in the Holtz era hasn't been a team we're excited about laying this type of price with. You know, they have a tendency to get a lead and then sit on the lead, and they're not pushing pace with up 3 scores in the second half, and it's all, you know, dink and dunk and run out the clock. So, I mean, I'm not getting involved in this game, Drew. I've given as much analysis as I can of a game that I have very little interest in betting.
Absolutely. Don't blame you for that, Teddy. We got Fresno State and Air Force out in the Mountain West. Falcons laying 3 at home, 50.5 the total here.
Yeah, now this one I'm interested in. And again, Fresno, the long-term track record for Fresno against Air Force is not pretty. And Fresno's a team that doesn't necessarily see the option every week. However, they do have 2 weeks to prepare for this ball game. They've been they've been a great underdog in the Tedford era. We've already seen them go on the road this year, hang around at USC and nearly beat, that was at home against Minnesota. That was a great game. I like this Fresno team. I like the spot for Fresno. And for Air Force, you know, I don't like this spot. And again, they're returning home off the loss to Navy. And it was a misleading final score. Navy scored on the very last play of the game on one of those Air Force fumble-rooski dealios. That was an intense game. I don't know if you watched it. I watched it start to finish. Air Force played terribly early on both sides of the ball. They made a huge fourth quarter rally, took the lead, were actually covering, and then the defense couldn't get a stop. And then at the end of the game when it mattered most. It was a physical game. It was an intense game. They blew it at the end. I don't know that we get Air Force's A game this week. And that's an offense that has having turnover problems, multiple turnovers 3 times the last 4 games. And the only one they didn't have was the game against Boise. They lost and failed to cover the number. Fresno or pass for this better. I will be a Bulldogs fan on Saturday.
And Teddy, when you say you don't know if you'll get their A game, a lot of times when I'm handicapping the military academies, I'm not really worried about motivation. But are you saying that might be part of the handicap here?
The only time I'm worried about the service academies in a motivation spot is off Army if they played each other.
Okay.
You understand?
Okay. No,
game after. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. Well, good stuff there. We got a big one here up next, Teddy. We got USC, the Trojans, at the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Looks like Notre Dame minus 10 and a hook in South Bend, 59.5 being the total.
I know there's some angle on that. I'm going to look for that Air Force angle. I know there's an angle after they face Army or Navy. I'll see if I can find that in a moment. And if not, I just saw some numbers somewhere, and I want to track them for our audience if we can. But the bottom line is, I'm pretty sure it's a negative subset for Air Force.
It makes sense
in that spot. When it comes to Notre Dame USC, fascinating game, really is. 2 years ago, Trojans went to South Bend, and they had a cluster injuries in the offensive line that week, and they got annihilated. It was 49-14. The game wasn't that close. Last year in Pasadena, USC made things close. You know, 24-17, they had success throwing the football against the Irish with a quick, short passing game, and it worked throughout. They didn't put up points in bunches, but they were able to move the football. They were to keep the Irish offense off the field. And when you start grading personnel here, I mean, USC has every bit the personnel that Notre Dame has. Not at quarterback. Book is better than anyone. There's a chance that Slovis could be back for USC this week. USC doesn't matter who they're playing with. They'll be going with a backup quarterback the rest of the way. And Book's good. I'm with you on that. But USC has found some modest success chucking the football around in recent weeks. They've got playmakers at wide receiver. That's how they beat Utah. That's how they beat up Stanford. And I know they've had losses in their 2 road games at BYU, at Washington. But the Washington game prior to the bye really stands out to me. It's a Huskies. They were number one. USC was in that game. They were, the final score said they lost by 2 touchdowns. It was all turnovers. They made mistakes, and they could make mistakes here, and lose by 2 touchdowns. They won't cover the number in this spot either. But it's hard for me to get to, especially with Notre Dame coming off that big blowout last week, off of back-to-back intense games. I don't love this spot for laying doubles with Notre Dame. If I had to play it, it'd be USC or pass.
Good stuff, Teddy. Let's head to the ACC. We got Florida State versus Clemson. Man, there was a time when this would be a monster game, but as we can see in the spread here, it's 26.5 or 27. Clemson laying at home, 59.5 the total, Teddy.
So my first reaction on Sunday afternoon when I make my lines, I see the first lines pop up from Circa here in Vegas, and we see the screen go up with all kinds of books posting. My first reaction was, wow, Clemson, that's too many points. Florida State's going to hang. I know that Florida State hasn't been good. They won back-to-back games. They haven't lost a game by more than a touchdown this year. They're in revenge for a 59-10 loss. Was it 59-10? It was just, it was
a lot.
As bad as it gets. Yeah. From a season ago. So there's, and of course, with Florida State with extra time to prepare, yada, yada. I'm like, maybe this is your spot for Florida State. And then you start reading some of the quotes out of Clemson. And remember, right before the bye, Clemson had they were tested by North Carolina. And make no mistake about it, Clemson's 3-2 against the spread this year. They haven't really looked that good yet. They have. The Texas A&M game stands out. The North Carolina game stands out. Trevor Lawrence hasn't found his rhythm. Clemson has an A game in them. You know what I mean? And Florida State's the kind of team that tends to bring out that A game. And with them having extra time to prepare as well, with Alabama jumping them in the polls, with all these little factors, the more I thought about it, the less I wanted to step in front of Clemson this week. I'm not stepping in front of Clemson this week. It could be a game that Clemson beats them every bit as badly as they did last year.
He's Teddy Covers on Twitter at Teddy_Covers. 58% NFL and college football in 2018, just last year, just under 60%. And of course, 58% over the last 5 years in the NFL. Also doing very good this year, up over 55% NFL and college football combined this year. So check them out at sportsmemo.com. Also, we got a coupon code here, TC39, gives you his 3-day all access for under $40. That's TC39 at checkout for his 3-day all access package at sportsmemo.com. We got 2 games left here, Teddy, finishing it up in the Big Ten. Penn State at Iowa. We got the Nittany Lions laying 3 in the hook on the road, 42 the total. And Teddy, you called it last week. Got to give you props, man, going against Iowa. Are you looking to do that again here at home?
Hell no. I'm looking the other way in this one. And unfortunately, that we've seen nothing but Iowa money, sharp Iowa money all week. So if we've already missed the best of the number with the Hawkeyes. That being said, it's still more than a field goal, and as long as it's more than a field goal, I continue to think that there's value on the Hawkeye side of the equation. Penn State has a sick statistical profile. Sick. They outgained Idaho by 528 yards. They outgained Maryland by 494. They outgained Purdue by 356.
Jeez.
That gives you a sick statistical profile.
Yeah.
Okay. And the wins against Idaho and Maryland on a bad day and Purdue mean nothing in a game like this. Their other 2 games, Buffalo, you remember the final score is 45-13. They covered that game. They were out-yarded and they were trailing. Did they trail at halftime in that game? It was a tight game at halftime, and then Penn State went nuts in the third. And the game against Pitt, which is, by the way, the only team they faced all year with a good defense or a decent defense. Penn State, life and death to win that game, out-yarded by Pitt at home. They scored 17. All right. I'm not sold on Penn State yet. Not even a little bit. The market move towards Penn State is telling us don't be sold on Penn State. Iowa played a bad game last week. They were ready for a bad game. They were due for a bad game. Michigan's defense is capable. Michigan's defense had something to say after that Wisconsin loss. And they came up and they blew up the line of scrimmage. They did everything right. That being said, they were -3 in turnovers. Nate Stanley played awful. Stanley doesn't play that way 2 weeks in a row. I don't expect that. Iowa's got a much better game in them than the one we just saw. We like Ferencz off a loss. We like that Hawkeyes defense. I would not be surprised at all if Iowa wins this game in straight-up fashion.
Teddy, quick question for you, just in terms of kind of like handicapping 101. The Iowa Hawkeyes, good quarterback, good coach, good defense. I like that. We're checking boxes. They are at home catching points. It's checking a lot of boxes, but one thing I really don't like in this profile, and we saw it last week, the playmakers on the outside, they don't have next-level guys. And I don't necessarily like betting on that profile of team, man. Are you kind of picking up what I'm laying down there?
I understand completely. Yeah, I love teams that have the quick strike capability.
Right.
And Iowa doesn't have a whole lot of that. That being said, what they send, like they keep sending tight ends to the NFL. They got another tight end there who can make some plays over the middle. No, they don't have wideouts who are gonna. I don't think they have NFL caliber wideouts on that squad. If there is, just no one that stood out to me in that regard. But we don't know how good Penn State's defense is. I'm not convinced it's as good as the stats are going to show.
Great stuff, Teddy. Guys, one game left. Remember the coupon code TC39 at checkout. 3-day all-access package with Teddy covers every game he releases, every sport he's handicapping for just $39. TC39, sportsmemo.com, 3-day all-access package. Teddy, last game up here, 10:30 Eastern, 7:30 Pacific. Kick here. Wyoming at San Diego State. Don't have to bet it, but the guys that won money during the Saturday are going to want to get a little something on the night game, Teddy. And the guys that lost some money on Saturday might want a little get-back game here. Degenerate special, so to speak, on national TV. We got Wyoming at San Diego State. Should be a lot of tickets written here. Low total, under 38. -3.5 on the Aztecs at home. One, do you have an opinion, a strong opinion to bet it? And if you don't, if gun to head, which side or total would you bet, Teddy?
All right, so let's there's a lot to talk about in this game. There really is. For the last game on the card, it's a lot of fun. San Diego State beat me. San Diego State, I had a free play on Colorado State last week. It was wrong, flat out wrong. And a lot of that had to do with, I think I overvalued the spot for. I think I overvalued Colorado State's confidence level in that ball game. They didn't come in expecting to beat San Diego State, and it showed. And San Diego State slapped them around a little bit. But the other thing that I missed, I knew how good San Diego State's defense is. This is a team that has already shut down. I mean, they shut down UCLA and New Mexico State and Utah State and Colorado State. No one's moved the football against the Aztecs up and down the field so far this season. I don't think that changes this week. Certainly not. You want to talk about a team that doesn't have any playmakers. Wyoming doesn't have a whole lot of playmakers on offense. Mm-hmm. They can bludgeon you off the line of scrimmage, and that's what that's their game plan, is to beat you up front and pound the rock. I don't know if that works against San Diego State. I really wonder how Wyoming scores. And of course, I saw them move the football a little bit against Tulsa. It's got a pretty good defense. The Missouri game back in week 1, I'm a lot of times you throw out stuff like that at this stage. And there was a fair bit of randomness in that. They created big plays that day. I don't know if they're going to do it here against San Diego State. The other thing I missed last week was Agnew for the Aztecs. Agnew is better. He was better than his numbers are always mediocre, and he's never particularly impressed me. He showed me something last week. On the road, hostile environment. He was really good. The efficient throws, not trying to do too much, milking clock when it was time to milk clock, pushing when it was time to push. I think San Diego State is better than Wyoming in the sense of this is a home field edge of 3 points. I think the Aztecs are more than that. Of course, San Diego State is 5-0 to the under so far this season, including the one game they had that was totaled in the 30s. That game finished with a 6-0 final score. Hard for me to bet over with Aztecs games, but the long-term trends say you bet the under 40s in college football, you make money. I'm not going to do that here. Total-wise, I'd be reluctant to ride this Aztecs under streak one more time.
Yeah, 38 being the total. The old 6-0 casher on the under before. Good stuff, Teddy, man, but, as always.
I got to jump in. If you miss kickoff on this one, don't forget The Washington Arizona State game is left. What is it? No, Washington, Arizona. It's Washington State, Arizona State. Washington, Arizona game is 8 o'clock Pacific, so at 11 o'clock Eastern. So if you missed this one, you still got one more you can get down on before Sunday.
I love it, Teddy. Yeah, multiple degenerate specials Saturday night.
I like
Should
that
be fun.
Arizona game. So for what it's worth, that's likely to be on my full card when it gets released on Friday.
Well, check it out at sportsmemo.com. Teddy covers TC39 at checkout for his 3-day all-access package. Teddy, thanks as always, man. Best of luck to you this weekend. Anything else you want to throw out in closing here?
I just want to say thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. We really appreciate you taking time out of your busy day to hang out with Drew and I. It's always a lot of fun to do, and thank you. Cheers. Good luck this weekend.
Well said, Teddy. Good luck from Las Vegas. Guys, best of luck with your bets. Have a fun, safe weekend, and we'll talk NFL every game on the board coming up tomorrow.